Okay, so thank you everyone for joining us. Again, we're really excited to be bringing you some information today with the ultimate guide to really making the most of the NHA study resources. So we're going to go ahead and get started, but we thought we would begin by just letting you know that here at NHA, we are fully invested for for the success for you and all of your learners. We're here to help make sure that all of them, no matter their background or needs, feel confident and empowered to challenge that certification when they're ready. Now, we know that confidence is a really big part of this process. So today's goals are to ensure that you have everything you need to help them excel. Now, before we get started, I wanted to take just a minute to get to know all of you guys just a little bit better. So you should see a poll populate on your screen. There's going to be several questions here about how would you define your role with your institution? There's lots of different options that you might see: a classroom educator, I'm proctoring the exam, I'm a program coordinator or director or counselor. Go ahead and pick the one that most closely fits with where you are and how you would define yourself. We're just trying to see a little bit about who's here with us today. I'm going to let this keep open for just a minute. We can see we got about half of you in there. Thank you so much for answering these questions. Give you guys just another second there. We'll close that poll down in just a minute. Okay, so it looks like that the majority of you here with us today are classroom educators or program directors, coordinators, and that's perfect. And for those of you who might identify differently, that's okay. What we have today is definitely going to help you too. So please know we're excited for all of you to be here. Okay, so wanted to take just a quick minute to review with you what NHA really does. You might be aware that NHA provides entry-level healthcare worker certifications and learning resources for every step of the journey. There are 8 nationally accredited certifications and aligned study materials, as well as additional educational tools that we're going to kind of briefly go over. But we really begin with 5 of those 8 certifications falling on more of a practitioner side of the frontline healthcare. This includes medical assistant, phlebotomist, pharmacy technician, EKG, and patient care. We also have 3 certifications on that administrative side. They include billing and coding, medical administrative assistant, and e-records. In addition, NHA develops comprehensive learning tools around the objectives for these professions. But today, we're not going to focus as much on these. Today's purpose is really to drive the conversation around those exam materials and readiness for the certification test. So this is where we're really going to focus today. NHA has actually been working on full program maps and sample pacing guides to help with implementing this full suite of possible resources for you, no matter what profession you're teaching towards. These maps can be a per product or per concept, also called segment breakdown. You can leverage this full stack of resources based on where your learners are or what materials are most important to be given at a certain time. These segments are aligned by products to show how common themes can help with long-term retention and mastery of topics if we can bundle them together with the kind of core concepts. These resources range from didactic learning in medical terminology or anatomy and physiology to the development of essential soft skills, as well as clinical skills for medical assistants, administrative assistants, and pharmacy technicians. These can be used across the entire learner's journey and can be packaged together to provide a comprehensive experience for your learners from start to finish. Now, no matter which profession or certification your learners are working toward, NHA's additional resources can help with foundational learning and skills development. So if you have any additional questions on this, please be sure to fill out that survey I mentioned. It's at the end of today's session, and we'll be sure that your primary contact from NHA will reach out for questions, assistance, or even a walkthrough. So though all of these resources I just mentioned are incredibly helpful, today we're going to focus on just those materials aiming toward exam day and certification. Here is a simplified timeline, and it's going to be our general roadmap for our discussion today. Now, before we get into that, I wanted to just take another quick minute. You're going to see a poll pop up again. We're curious, what are you most hoping to learn today? So these are some common themes that we see. Is it about study materials, monitoring learner progress? How do I really incorporate this into my program? Or even just the best way to get them to prepare. And if there's an other, you'll see, go ahead and put that in the chat so that we can see and make sure that hopefully we address it, right? This is so that I can make sure that we cover these topics since I'm the one leading today's presentation. So go ahead and take some time. Oh my gosh, I got almost everybody. Thank you so much for that. It looks like primarily we are focused on helping my learners prepare for the exam, but there are some other thoughts here too about monitoring progress, getting them set up. We are going to cover all of this today. So to touch on as many of these as possible, there's some key steps that you can take. And we're going to go through each of those core steps today on best practices to help them with that certification exam. But ultimately, we know that the building blocks of their success is you. You are the vital piece of this process, and your involvement and encouragement can really shape their ability to achieve this goal of earning their industry certification. As we go through these steps, we're going to be outlining when and how you can address these processes, which truly can make all the difference. So the first thing that you can do to help your learners have a successful experience is for you to, guess what? Start planning early, right? Surprise on that one. We all know getting a head start is always a good idea. With that in mind, prior to the start of a term or program, check to be sure everything is ready to go. So if you're providing the NHA exam materials to your learners, one of the most important first steps is to check under your NHA account that your inventory is available, that they're there for you to be able to provide. And if not, connect with your NHA representative to finalize or approve your order request. You want to do this before enrolling learners into your materials to ensure everyone gains access. Now, once that's all ready, that is the right time then to create your course. Take some time to review additional materials that we have for this, like how-to guides, walkthroughs. You can find all of these through your administrative login. Remember to fill out that instructor course form, that form at the end that's for that other survey. We can try to bring these to you as soon as possible. If you need or want any refresher training on best practices for your materials, or if you're using a new resource this year or are just new to NHA, this is the right time to get something scheduled with your primary NHA contact with one of the NHA client experience partners. There are those folks answering your Q&A and chat with us today. This is a team that is here to make sure that you are ready, that you have everything that you need. And in fact, in that survey at the end of our webinar, you do have an option to request one of these partners to follow up directly and schedule with you if you like. So now let's go take a look at what these steps really look like. To start, you'll need to log in to your administrative account with NHA at nhanow.com. Now, if you haven't yet received an invitation, you want to double check with your institution because administrative accounts are by invitation only. So please don't go out on the website and make an account. You want to make sure you get invited to do so. So double check in your inbox, your spam box, other to get that invitation. Once you've logged in, to check that inventory, this is the really important piece. You want to look on the left-hand side of your page under inventory. Once you're there, right now, you're going to see a pop-up. We're going to take just a minute to talk about this. NHA has been doing some platform updates. So there's some extra things out there right now. Read through this. This is really important right now because there's multiple versions of products out there at the moment. That's going to be ending soon, but we want to make sure you're using the product that you need or want to move forward with. So you want to double check that this is the inventory that you have and the one that you want. So for the MA test, for example, that's updating in January, which MA material do you need to be sure you have inventory for? So when you're done, you can close that down and then you can see your inventory to confirm what you already have in your account. This is what has been purchased by the institution, but not yet provided to learners. So if what you see here isn't sufficient for your group or cohort, or if it's in the wrong version, that's when you want to follow up, doing your proper institution steps, but also connecting with your NHA contact to get more added. Again, this needs to happen before you enroll your learners. So you want to make sure everyone has access. This is the number one first step in getting them enrolled. To create a course to implement these materials, you can now select the courses feature on your account. Now, before you get into creating a new course, it might be the right time to archive any old or finished courses from the previous term. To do this, you open up those existing course details for those existing courses, and you can choose the option to archive the course at the top. Please note, this is not going to revoke access from anyone who is in this course. It will just turn off the ability to add a new learner to it. It also helps prevent confusion and keep your reporting clean so that we don't have cross folks in there. So once that's done, now you can select the new course feature from that same space in courses and begin to set up your course, selecting the materials that you want. Now, again, right now, there's a lot going on in that space. So you might be able to see this walkthrough of course updates, course creation updates. This process has just recently changed a little bit. If you'd like to revisit it, please feel free. But from this point, simply fill out the information for your course and then scroll down to the items that you want to add into your content. Now, be sure to only add the materials in your course that you want to provide to all learners, right? A great way to think about it is, how do you want to view your reporting? Reporting will be based on the content in the course. So if you need to view different groups separately or products independently, then make sure that the course is built to meet your needs. Remember also which inventory version you want to be selecting. When you're ready, you can scroll down to the bottom and create your course. The other part of preparing ahead is making sure that you are ready to implement any of the necessary steps for your program. So this may include reviewing some of these additional tools, including how-to walkthroughs and videos. You can even look over the candidate-facing options to see what it looks like from their perspective. These are found from your homepage in the Knowledge Center. This is where you can do an open search for any resource you may need, or look through the 6 core areas of resources, including preparing learners to test, exam day troubleshooting, and supplemental implementation guides. Okay, so now that you are ready to go, the next step is to get your learners ready by getting them set up in their personal NHA account. So, based off of the data we've been able to collect across the last several years, our research suggests that those who start their learning journey with NHA earlier are more confident in their readiness, but also have a higher likelihood to actually take the exam at the end. We see that those learners who are given this kind of confidence have a higher probability of passing in their first attempt. So we do recommend that you invite them to get started as early in the program as possible, even if you're not yet starting their exam preparation. This applies, of course, to any of the additional learning resources as well. Incorporating these materials into your content and curriculum is one of the ultimate steps to success. With all of our streamlined resources, your learners can already begin to familiarize themselves with the platform, tools, format, and NHA will be sending them suggestions and encouragement as they mentally prepare for the road ahead. Now, for these logins, there are a couple of best practices to keep in mind. We recommend that a candidate login be an email address that they check frequently, not just while they're studying with you, one that they will continue to check once they complete your program. Think about, where would they like their password reset email to go? Or even, what email address do they have on their resume? This is a great time to begin this conversation on digital professionalism for these academic programs. Maybe even setting up a professional online presence, email, LinkedIn account, NHA login. So all of these are things we could do right now, but they should also take note of the password. No one wants to be stuck in an exam room unable to start due to a forgotten password. So it should be one that they'll remember. The other best practice is to confirm that the name on their candidate account is their legal first and last name, whatever is on their government issued photo ID. This is what will be used on exam day to verify their identity. And if the account name doesn't match, then they will not be able to test. So you can't set these up for them, but you can monitor to be sure everything follows these best practices. If you invite your learners to create their own accounts early in the process prior to accessing course content, there's an invitation feature directly on your account. This is a best practice if you can do that so that they can start, ooh, sorry about that, so they can start to get that encouragement from NHA. When it's time, you can then add them to your course roster, providing them some of that inventory we checked already. Make sure you check that first. We do recommend starting them as early as is realistic in your program. It helps to establish in their growth mindset that they can do this and can promote a higher dedication to the belief that they have the ability and will be able to see this through. In fact, a survey of over 6,000 recent NHA exam candidates stated that they wished they had studied with the NHA exam prep earlier and more frequently than they did prior to sitting for the exam. This just speaks to the level of confidence in the exam format and content, which leads us to step 3, implementing the exam preparation resources into your program. We highly recommend providing access to these materials again early and actively incorporate them as much as possible to help with engagement. Now, this step actually has two main components. That's implementing the study guide and quizzes, as well as the practice tests and review resources. I want to take another quick question. So you should see another poll. How many of you right now are actively or have used the NHA study materials? So, we're just kind of trying to see, is this familiar to you? Have you been using it? Or maybe you've used our other tools and this might be new. Or perhaps you didn't even know that these existed, in which case, cool. Let's talk about it. Let's just take a quick minute. Go ahead and fill it out. These results are coming in super quick. Thank you so much. Okay, we're going to close that down here in just a second. We got almost everybody. So it looks like the majority of you right now are using that prep currently or plan to. And for those of you who would like to, that's a great thing to post in that survey link you'll get at the end so that we can definitely have your NHA representative reach out to you right away. A little bit of background on these materials and best practices is that over the last decade, NHA has been able to award over 1 million certifications across the country. And we use this data, the content from that process, to help define best practices on implementation for you. We evaluate candidate behavior in preparation compared to outcomes on the exam itself and can get some pretty strong analytics to assist you with implementation. We've seen that across the country, those who use these preparation resources and follow best practices when studying, that's the key, along with your program course content, have a much higher possibility of passing the exam in their first attempt. So, moving through step 3, we highly recommend that you provide access to these materials as early as possible, aligning their learning to the NHA test plan. If also possible, using some of those core skills developers I mentioned. But specifically for the exam, this begins with the online study guide and quizzes that you can embed into your academic program. Use these quizzes to evaluate candidate readiness. These follow the test outline for each core domain. So they are not end of module quizzes. They actually are like taking this portion of the exam. So there may actually be questions on an end of module quiz that isn't directly covered in the module, and that is intentional. What if they were taking that test on that content right now? How would they do? Remember, the NHA study guide is a review towards an exam. So we want to see how they would do in applying their knowledge in real time. So those quizzes are really designed to give them that viewpoint, to give them that confidence in their ability to move forward. Oh, went too fast. Sorry about that. So we also know that engagement in learning is not new to NHA nor education in general. And involving several different techniques and practices in your educational program can really help, not only with involvement, but a higher feeling of satisfaction in the learning process. So this list is a list that was derived by an article from Inside Higher Ed that says that when you use the majority of these, or at least 6 of these in your program, with, that they instill higher feelings of confidence in the learner. With just a little bit of creativity, all of NHA's right-sized core learning or exam prep materials can accomplish almost every item on this list. Okay, let's take a quick look at what those exam readiness study guides and quizzes actually look like and contain. So, all of the study guides are aligned, as I mentioned, directly to the test plan and include key components. Depending on the certification type, these can look a little bit different, but the resources will always include audio readers, quizzes, personal checkpoints, and detailed reporting on time spent and outcomes. Any assessments or questions will provide rationales to learners to understand more about how NHA words questions so they can see the normatives behind those answers. Different certifications may also provide case studies, games, flashcards, or professionalism videos, or even EMR challenges. Just depends on the content. Also, for any learning tool with flashcards, your enrolled learners can download the NHA flashcard app to help with learning. Once they have access to their study materials, they can download this with their NHA login. Should then take them through all of the flashcards, which are also in their study guide, but with fun ways to keep organized and help as they review. NHA will also monitor time spent in this app compared to their study guide so you can see if they're using it. This is easily downloaded for Android or Apple, and there are how to's on the website that walk you through exactly how to do that. Just depends on the device that you have. Now, you also have complimentary access to view all of the materials you're providing to your learners through a preview feature in your NHA course details. From here, you can select any item that you want to look at to review. So the quizzes, let's start there, tied to each section, are designed to look and feel as close to the exam as possible. But as I mentioned earlier, are in this one core area so that you can see their level of mastery at the topic level. These questions don't just tell learners if they're right or wrong, but why they were, which is designed to help them with familiarity and comfort, especially related to test anxiety. Now, because they get the answers, we don't really recommend they take these quizzes over and over again to get a high score. The score is not as important, but instead, to take them, use that information to study further before moving into the next module. You also have available to you product specific implementation guides. These outline the content, suggestions, and even the average time it should take for a learner to navigate through the material. So here's an example, just 4 of our 8 certifications, and the time that we would suggest that an average learner take to get through it. And it does vary pretty widely depending on which learning resource you're using. There's also an example of how we outline not only per certification, but also a per module view to help you with implementation and setting expectations for your learners. Now, many of our tools also have some additional implementation toolkits. Now, these do vary depending on the learning resource that you may be using, but they can include items like downloadable PowerPoint presentations aligned to core learning. Those are primarily going to be in the core learning tools like medical terminology and AMP. Same with the optional lesson plans that outline that core content, foundational learning, testing banks and resources, additional activities to scrub and polish that learning, walkthrough videos unique to the product, and also mapping resources to accreditations, test plans, even possible similar textbooks. Just know that each toolkit is unique and based on the learning resource it's supporting. So, not all toolkits have all the same items. These are just examples of what could be in them. So, when we're talking about exam prep, at this time, NHA has a toolkit for the CCMA 3.0, that's one launching in January. Those materials are out now. The new CMAA exam, learning materials, and our billing and coding exam. They're pretty popular, so we're working on getting more of them, but they are available for all of the rest of our skills builders, foundational learning, and core learning tools as well. Okay, the next part of step 3 are the practice tests and review resources. So the full study material package includes a series of practice tests. Now, these are designed to look and feel as close to the exam as possible and follow the full test plan, which is why implementing these too soon in the learning cycle may not be in the best interest of the learners. Unlike module quizzes, these have a limit on the attempts available. Each test comes Also with what we call the NHA focused review. This is a personalized study tool to help candidates as they navigate through their practice tests. So, when we monitor student behaviors with practice tests, these really should be used after the study guide has been completed. Some of our newer tools may include a baseline assessment. And in this instance, we do suggest to use that before the study guide. So at present, this applies to just a couple of our tools, the CCMA 3.0, the CMAA, and the billing and coding. Same with the toolkits. So refer to your implementation guides for more suggestions. You can use a practice test in the other tools as a baseline if you want, totally up to you. But we have seen that that first test that occurs after the study guide should be as close to that real exam experience as possible. Some of our materials will automatically do this, but you can also do this manually from your perspective as well. And after that first practice test, use reporting and data to help define your remediation plan for your learners and move through the rest, leveraging that unique focused review in between to help them study further. Now, once you've issued that third practice test, we then suggest that the fourth attempt be again in as close to a real exam environment as you can create if possible. This not only provides your learners with real world experiences of the actual exam, but helps to develop their skills related to test taking and test anxiety. We've seen that those who have at least 2 practice tests in this kind of real exam experience have a higher probability of success on their exam on test day. So the practice tests, as I mentioned, are designed to follow that full test and look and feel as close to the exam as possible. So for exam readiness, no matter which certification they're taken through, they get at least 3 different test versions that will cycle to a total of 6 test attempts. It's the same for all exams. Now, just because they get a bunch of tries doesn't mean they should take them all right away to try to memorize questions. These are designed to help prepare and study. Each of these attempts is just like taking that full exam. But the questions they get on the practice tests, they should not expect to see on the actual exam itself. They are designed to follow the test blueprint for scored questions, provide feedback, reporting, additional tools to help them study. And then you also, as the instructor, have the ability to turn on or off the rationales that we saw for the quizzes to help as they prepare. This is what you'd want to do to create that kind of mock exam experience. If possible, even have them sit in a testing center or require a time limit for tests. It's not important that they take all 6 assessments or even necessarily what score they get, but that they study in between. It's the growth in between those attempts that is the core element. So the scores themselves aren't as important as seeing those scores grow. And that's where the focused review can come in. So after each practice assessment, they receive a personalized score report that shows them the outcomes in each area. They won't be told what question was missed, but what competencies to work on. This is to be sure they go back and study on areas that they need some more help. They haven't quite mastered yet. And after that, they can immediately launch the review. This helps them to kind of go back again and continue to work on the areas they need to grow in. They can come back at any time. And we do recommend that they spend time in this as well as in supplemental materials you provide before taking their next assessment. Now, this is a different tool. It's specific to each learner and each test attempt to help them focus in on what they need to learn further. It is printable, it is filterable, and it also helps to make sure that they're focusing and studying on the right things. Again, it isn't necessarily about the grade or score that they got on the practice test as it is about growing in between. So we really recommend you don't tie a particular grade to a practice test. We're going to talk a little bit more about that here in a minute, about monitoring their progress. One of the things you guys were interested in that survey earlier was about this. So we're definitely going to take a look at how this works. So from the first moment the first learner accesses study content, detailed reports begin to load, and they give you and the learner visibility to what was accessed, time spent, quizzes completed, assessment outcomes. These learning resources have recently had a little bit of an upgrade in the platform, so we're going to take a little bit of a walk through what this really looks like. And that starts in the Learning Insight Center, where you can see your new dashboard. This is recently accessed reports will bookmark You can also bookmark actively the ones that you want to have on your dashboard, but selecting any course that you want will take you into the core information. They're designed to give you a detailed view of learner progress. Navigating through this will show you reports for your week, time spent in learning, outcomes, topics at risk. Note this is also where you can see time in the flashcard app, which I mentioned earlier. You can see here scrolling down, you can view the learners, the study guide, the module, the assessments, and suggested topics to review. You can see each of your learners here under the Learners tab to start, identifying their progress through the materials. The right-hand corner is a filter, which will allow you to filter by learner, content, assessments. You can really dive into what it is you want to look at, and these will save from one tab to the next. Now, if we go to the Modules tab from that homepage, this is going to outline each module. Selecting any of these will directly dive deeper into that one area, providing a per candidate look with the most recent access, total time, quiz attempts, scores, and selecting any candidate name will take you directly to their reporting. This is the learner's view of what they have access to, and you can view each module, assessment, or report at the individual level right from there. You and your learners will see their materials across any resource provided, and you'll be able to view independent items such as modules or assessments, as well as I said earlier, suggested review across topics in that course to help identify the areas at risk. So for those that use exam prep, those courses, this is actually powered by the NHA Vitals engine, which is a predictive analytics tool that helps the educational experience. Learners are categorized. We're going to talk a little bit about this. The focus is on their learning behaviors and performance across their prep products. This begins with the first step, first day, and engagement starts with kind of some core areas, what we're evaluating. So we're continuously measuring learners based on their usage of all aspects of these resources compared to learners who have passed the NHA exam who had similar resources. So this includes study guide performance, practice test progress, focus review time, even frequency of use of the materials. We're constantly evaluating this. Now, this is the vitals engagement that you can see here. These are visible only to you as an administrator. So learners don't see their category. This is for you to help teach, guide, support both group and individual remediation, where learners have maybe more guided insights through their topics breakdown on their own. So the key topics are what learners are evaluated by through the Vitals engine to define these statuses that we're assessing. So let's talk a little bit about what each one of these is. So on track, right, is going to be that learner behavior where performance is tracking with learners who have the same material and successfully passed the exam. Developing is for those who may be a little bit off track with that, but they're still doing okay, just maybe not quite as in tune with what we would expect. We get to at risk, and that would be learning behavior that does not resemble that of those who have successfully passed the certification test. And then you may also see not enough data. So this is the materials that maybe they've not yet touched that material. So we're going to talk real quick about a pro tip here. When you're monitoring your learner progress, you want to understand the way that the NHA certification exam works in comparison with practice tests. All of these resources from prep, quizzes, practice tests, they begin with the test plan. The test plan is the blueprint or outline of the exam itself. Now, we highly recommend that you provide this to your students. It is available on our website, but it is important to understand how they will be scored on the certification exam. So it's a little bit different than how they're going to be scored on their practice tests. So we want to take a minute just to talk about that. Again, they're all out on our website. Simply locate the certification type that you want to look at, and the test plan is downloadable right from there. Okay, I'm going to test you here real quick. I'm going to post a question, true or false. The NHA practice assessments use the same scoring system as the NHA certification exam. True or false? Give you just a quick second, with me 20 seconds. You already see people coming in. Great. Almost. Okay, got almost everybody. That was really fast, you guys. Good. All right, let's go ahead and close that up. So it looks like we've got 50-50. There's a couple people who said, I don't know, I'm not sure. That's totally okay. No judgment. But half of you think it's the same and half of you think it's different. So let's talk about that. The NHA study materials allow you to monitor your learners in a unique and special group, right? You know them. You can observe their growth, their behavior. The practice tests provide clear and specific percentages of accuracy to help understand how they're doing as a group or individually. Now, the certification exam is different. They're designed to compare your learners against the entire country. It's a much larger group. So the scores that we use, the scoring process is not the same as the practice tests. We're gauging their readiness to move into those roles and use a scaled scoring system. Because these are different, the benchmarks that you might have on a practice test doesn't actually reflect the same level of readiness due to these differences, or even assigning a typical letter grade. 80% on a practice test might not actually be a B. That might be an A, just depending on the practice test, the learner, and how they're going to be tested in the long run. So, assigning a grade level to a practice assessment is not going to be quite as accurate as you might want it to be. So, how does this work? Once an exam is released after it's been developed, our psychometrics team processes the questions we use and evaluate them. Everyone who tests will follow the exact same blueprint. Again, it's what everything is based on. The scored items on the exam outline a series of competencies and tasks, and everyone will have the same amount of questions in the same categories. But those questions may be different from one test to the next. So, to fairly score each individual across a variety of questions, each question is weighted, is evaluated based on primarily on how hard is the question, but also maybe how often in your job you have to do this thing, or how important is it you get it right the first time. These are just some layers to establish what we call the cut score, the scaled score, which is a range of 200 to 500, with 500 being a perfect score. So due to that, the minimum to pass is a 390. Now, this is not a percentage of accuracy, but based off of the weighted scores, once all of the questions have been evaluated, a 390 is sufficient to show mastery at the topic level. So again, it is not the same as the practice tests, which are simply a percentage of accuracy. All right, now we've been through a lot. That was a big deal. We're going to take a quick minute, and I'm just going to get your temperature check here. I'm going to post another poll. What so far has been brand new to you today? Was it best practices for course setup, course enrollment, program maps, these resources to implement, or the analytics, or other? Please post that in the chat. That's totally fine. Just a little bit curious to find out a little bit more about what was most interesting to you so far. It looks like a lot of these are coming in as the resources to implement, reporting, enrollment, and login. Great. Thank you. Just a little bit curious, making sure we're still hitting on what you guys need. All right, moving into step 5. Implementation and involvement is really important. And so NHA has created what's called the NHA exam readiness checklist, because this has to do not with the exam prep, but with getting ready to test, which is a part of this process. So we're going to take our same timeline and use the major players on this checklist just to outline it one at a time, starting around when you're going to be implementing those practice tests. And we know all programs are different, but this typically is somewhere at least 30 days, 45 days prior to your exam date. Around this time, if you're testing at your location, this is when you should schedule your exam at least to be available for registration. If you're using any prepaid exam codes for your learners, ensure that those are set up. If you need them, connect with your NHA representative. This is also the right time to ensure that any learner who may qualify for a testing accommodation with proper documentation, like an IEP or 504, for example, submit that request for exam day. They have to have an active application on file in order to submit this. That's where having your exam date open, and they can get that submitted in time. To ensure everything is ready for exam day, we do suggest again that your learners start to submit their applications. No matter what, they have to be completed prior to the application deadline. This is 1 week before exam. Now we recommend, we're going to talk about this, that you monitor these through your administrative login. I'm going to show you how to do this in just a second. In that kind of 2-week window before exam day, learners should be submitting or have already completed exam applications, which again, you want to be actively monitoring through your administrative login so there are no surprises and no one missing. Check in on any of those who did submit an accommodation request. They might need a different exam date or additional documentation to submit. We want to make sure that gets taken care of immediately. And confirm that your testing location, your proctors are ready. If they need additional assistance or additional training, we want to make sure that's set up. As an instructor, as I know many of you are, please remember you are not allowed to proctor your own learners. You want to be sure someone is set up who can. And if you're using off-site exams through PSI, this is the time you want to be sure they're scheduled and have all the resources that they need, which you can view through monitoring those applications. During the final week prior to test is when NHA would suggest you implement your final practice assessment, providing that real exam experience. You may also receive an email to approve an exam roster. If you're testing through PSI, that might not happen, but you should still, again, be monitoring your rosters, confirming applications are ready to go. You want to provide any final reminders to your learners, including anyone with an accommodation. Review the test plan, location, date, time. Make sure that they check their logins and passwords. Again, they're going to probably be on a different device than they've been studying on, and they won't have a saved login. So we want to make sure that they can log in to their test and be able to test. And then, of course, finally, we get to the point where they earn their NHA certification and become certified. So that checklist covers the idea of monitoring applications, but let's look at how that actually works. So scheduling exams, you want to double check that those exams are available first through your exam calendar. Here you can see upcoming exams in the next 30 to 90 days. The exam status is something to take a look at. Is it open for registration? Has it closed? Has it finalized yet? And that application deadline is where you can see the last day a learner can apply. So again, you want to be monitoring this to make sure everyone is on that roster in advance, which you can do again through the left-hand side through the View Exam Applications. This is where you actively monitor all applications to test. You can have access to both on-site and off-site applications. You'll be able to see if it's a completed application, has it been scheduled if it's through PSI, and then you can also download this into an Excel spreadsheet for easier filtering if you want, or save it as a PDF. But this is where you're monitoring your learners to see where they are. Is it done? Did they pay for it? Whatever that thing is. Again, the week before the test is when you might get that notification of roster approval. Now, if you're not the person who's supposed to approve rosters, don't do it. Follow up with your institution. It's a little bit different if you're testing off-site. You just want to make sure that you open the exam or location that you need to review. You select your learners, and then you can also then approve or reject those learners as necessary. But do take note of the default filter. On-site testing will default to pending approval, and off-site testing, I believe, is for all learners. So just double check that if it looks weird or you're missing somebody, double check that filter. Ooh, guess what? Bonus tip. The last one is you. Encouragement. As you and they work through this educational timeline, your involvement in their process is vital. So many of these individuals, this is the first time they've done anything of this magnitude, and they may not even think that they can accomplish it. So setting those benchmarks, as I mentioned earlier, may not actually be helpful for them, may more often discourage them from even trying. Our goal is that any learner has the potential to reach their goal and earn that industry credential and become NHA certified. So your encouragement in this process is key. Now, on that, I know I want to encourage you. I want to just take a minute and thank you all for being here. We're so thankful for your time today. We know how hard you work and often how little it actually looks like you're actually seen, but we see you. Believe it or not, your learners do too. And I just want to thank you so much for really identifying, you really are heroes in all that you're doing. Okay, so before we get to Q&A, I just wanted to reiterate we've been recording. We are going to be sending out this session, the recording to everyone who attended today. We're also going to be posting in the chat here real quick those links for those 2 surveys. So please just take a quick minute and open those up. They're going to be posted here. Remember, there's a survey for a $50 gift card. That's a survey on today. That's a raffle for a $50 gift card. And then that personal survey is that a larger kind of information form. That is, if filling that out will put you in a raffle for a $500 gift card. But this is also where you want to submit if you want one-on-one training or your NHA representative to follow up with you. So before we get too much ado, we're going to go ahead and open up to questions. So we're going to get to those questions and see what's going on.